the CEO's favorite notification. Fourth Natawat had dreamed about working at FutureMind ever since he entered university. As one of Thailand's fastest-growing technology companies, FutureMind was known for creating innovative AI products and attracting the brightest young talents in the country. Receiving an internship offer from the company felt like winning a lottery ticket, and Fourth spent days preparing for his first day. Unlike most interns, who were nervous and quiet, Fourth arrived with a bright smile, a backpack full of notebooks, and enough energy to make the entire office feel warmer. Within an hour, he had already learned the names of the receptionists, chatted with the marketing team, and somehow convinced several programmers to take a short coffee break with him. Everyone quickly agreed that the new intern was adorable, hardworking, and impossible not to like. However, there was one person in the building who seemed completely unaffected by Fourth's charm. Gemini Norowit, the company's 28-year-old CEO and technical director, was a name that almost everyone in Thailand's technology industry knew. He had built FutureMind from a small startup into a highly successful company through intelligence, discipline, and countless sleepless nights. Despite his achievements, he was known for being incredibly cold. Employees respected him because of his talent, but many were terrified whenever they had to enter his office. Gemini rarely smiled, never joined company parties, and always focused on work above everything else. Rumors about him spread through every department. Some people claimed they had never seen him laugh. Others joked that he cared more about computer code than human beings. On his very first day, Fourth accidentally experienced the famous CEO's intimidating reputation firsthand. While carrying a stack of documents through the hallway, he turned a corner too quickly and collided with someone. Papers flew everywhere across the floor. The cheerful intern immediately bent down to collect them while apologizing repeatedly, but the moment he looked up, he froze. Standing in front of him was Gemini Norowit himself. Several employees nearby stopped walking and stared in horror, expecting the intern to be scolded. Instead, Gemini calmly crouched down, picked up a few papers, and handed them back. "Pay attention next time," he said in a low voice before walking away. The entire hallway remained silent for several seconds after he disappeared. Everyone expected Fourth to be shaken, but surprisingly, he simply laughed awkwardly and thanked everyone for helping him. Later that afternoon, while other employees warned him to stay away from the CEO, Fourth found himself thinking about something strange. Gemini had not looked angry at all. In fact, beneath the cold expression, he had seemed exhausted. That thought stayed in Fourth's mind. From the next morning onward, he made it a habit to greet Gemini whenever their paths crossed. Sometimes he walked past without reacting. Yet Fourth continued anyway. Weeks slowly turned into months. Fourth proved himself to be a talented intern, earning praise from multiple departments for both his technical skills and positive attitude. Whenever deadlines became stressful, he somehow found a way to make people smile. Even employees who normally avoided social interaction enjoyed working with him. Meanwhile, Gemini began noticing things he never expected to notice. He noticed how Fourth always brought extra snacks for coworkers who skipped lunch. He noticed how the intern stayed late to help teammates finish projects even when he had already completed his own tasks. He noticed how the office atmosphere became noticeably brighter whenever Fourth entered a room. Most importantly, he noticed that Fourth was the only person in the company who looked at him without fear. One rainy evening, after a particularly difficult meeting with investors, Gemini walked through the office feeling more exhausted than usual. As he passed the break room, he heard laughter coming from inside. Curious, he glanced through the glass wall and saw Fourth teaching several programmers a silly game while everyone laughed together. For a brief moment, Gemini found himself standing there watching. Then, before he could stop himself, he noticed Fourth looking up and spotting him through the glass. Instead of becoming nervous like everyone else, Fourth immediately smiled and waved. Gemini should have walked away. He should have ignored it like he always did. But for reasons he could not explain, he felt the corner of his lips move slightly upward before he turned around and continued down the hallway. It was such a small moment that nobody else noticed. Nobody except Fourth, whose eyes widened in surprise. For the first time since joining the company, he had seen Gemini smile. It lasted less than a second, but somehow it made Fourth strangely happy. Neither of them realized it then, but that tiny moment would become the beginning of a story that would completely change both of their lives. 3 months passed, and Fourth slowly became one of the most popular people at FutureMind. His internship was going well, his co-workers loved him, and even the strict managers often praised his work. The only thing that never seemed to change was Gemini's personality. The CEO was still as quiet and distant as ever, spending most of his days moving between meetings, development reviews, and business negotiations. However, Fourth had begun noticing small changes that nobody else seemed to see. Gemini would occasionally ask for his opinion during project discussions. Sometimes he would send short messages complimenting Fourth's work. Once, he even remembered Fourth's favorite coffee order after hearing it only one time. To everyone else, these actions meant nothing, but to Fourth, they showed that beneath the cold exterior, Gemini was actually thoughtful. One Friday evening, after staying late to finish a project, Fourth left the office feeling exhausted. While walking toward the train station, he decided to stop at a small bar nearby to grab a drink and relax before heading home. The place was quiet, with soft music playing in the background. As he entered, his eyes immediately landed on a familiar figure sitting alone in a corner booth. It was Gemini. Fourth had never seen him outside the office before. The CEO looked different somehow. His tie was slightly loose, his sleeves were rolled up, and his expression seemed unusually tired. Before Fourth could decide whether to leave or say hello, a beautiful woman approached Gemini's table and sat down across from him. Curious, Fourth chose a seat far away and tried not to pay attention, but as the conversation became more emotional, it was impossible not to overhear parts of it. The woman was Gemini's girlfriend. Or at least she had been. She spoke with frustration and sadness, telling him that she was tired of feeling invisible. She said he was brilliant, successful, and dependable, but he never knew how to express his feelings. He always chose work first. He never shared what was in his heart. Gemini listened quietly without interrupting. Finally, the woman stood up and shook her head. "I don't think you know how to love anyone except your company," she said before walking away. Fourth watched her leave, feeling uncomfortable for accidentally witnessing such a private moment. He expected Gemini to leave immediately, but instead the CEO remained seated, staring silently at the untouched glass in front of him. For the first time, Gemini looked completely alone. Fourth hesitated for several minutes before gathering enough courage to approach. "Gemini," he said softly. Gemini looked up, clearly surprised. "Fourth? Sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you." Gemini glanced at the empty seat across from him. "It's fine." Fourth could have left then, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the sadness in Gemini's eyes. Maybe it was the fact that nobody should have to sit alone after being heartbroken. Without thinking too much, he sat down. At first the conversation was awkward. Fourth talked about random things, including a bug he had spent 3 hours fixing earlier that week and a funny argument between 2 programmers at the office. To his surprise, Gemini actually listened. Little by little, the tension disappeared. Fourth's natural warmth slowly pulled Gemini into the conversation. Soon they were talking about university memories, favorite movies, childhood dreams, and all the things they had never discussed inside the office. It was the longest personal conversation they had ever shared. For the first time, Fourth saw the real Gemini behind the CEO title. He learned that Gemini loved astronomy, stayed awake late at night reading technology articles, and secretly enjoyed old romantic movies even though he would never admit it publicly. After the night at the bar, something began to change between Gemini and Fourth, although only one of them seemed aware of it. Fourth returned to the office exactly the same as before, cheerful, friendly, and completely unaware that he had become the center of Gemini's attention. Gemini, however, found himself noticing everything. He noticed when Fourth arrived in the morning and when he left at night. He noticed when Fourth looked tired after working on difficult tasks. He noticed which snacks he liked, which songs he hummed while coding, and even how his eyes lit up whenever he solved a challenging problem. It was frustrating because Gemini had always been someone who controlled every aspect of his life, yet his thoughts kept drifting toward one person. The worst part was that Fourth made it seem effortless. One afternoon, during a product development meeting, Fourth confidently presented an idea that solved a problem the engineering team had been struggling with for weeks. The room immediately filled with discussion and excitement. While everyone focused on the proposal, Gemini found himself staring at Fourth instead. The intern was smiling proudly while explaining his solution, completely unaware of how attractive he looked when he was passionate about something. "Gemini?" Fourth suddenly called. "What do you think?" Gemini realized the entire room was waiting for his answer. Clearing his throat, he nodded. "It's a good idea." The engineering team nearly fell out of their chairs. Coming from Gemini, that was practically a standing ovation. Fourth only smiled brightly and thanked him. That smile stayed in Gemini's mind for the rest of the day. A few weeks later, FutureMind organized a company retreat in northern Thailand to celebrate the completion of an important project. For most employees, it was a chance to relax. For Gemini, it became several days of trying, and failing, not to look at Fourth. During the first morning, everyone participated in outdoor activities, including a hiking trip through the mountains. Fourth was excited about everything, running ahead to take photos and pointing out every interesting thing he saw. Gemini secretly stayed close enough to make sure the younger man did not get into trouble. While crossing a narrow suspension bridge above a small river, Fourth accidentally stepped on a loose wooden plank. His foot slipped slightly and he lost his balance. Before he could fall, a strong hand grabbed his wrist. Fourth looked up and found Gemini holding him firmly. For a brief moment, their eyes met. "Be careful," Gemini said quietly. Instead of immediately letting go, he kept holding Fourth's hand until they safely reached the other side. The contact lasted only a minute, but it left both of them strangely aware of each other afterward. At least it affected Gemini. Fourth simply thanked him and continued walking as if nothing had happened. That evening, the company gathered around a campfire. Employees laughed, shared stories, and sang songs under the stars. Gemini normally avoided these events, but for some reason he stayed. Fourth eventually sat beside him, wrapping himself in a blanket against the cool mountain air. After an hour of listening to everyone talk, Fourth's energy finally disappeared. Without thinking, he leaned slightly against Gemini's shoulder. "I'm so tired," he mumbled. Gemini's entire body froze. Fourth seemed completely comfortable, as though resting against him was the most natural thing in the world. The CEO could feel the warmth of his body through their jackets and smell the faint scent of shampoo in his hair. Around them, the fire crackled softly while everyone continued talking. Nobody seemed to notice the moment except Gemini, whose heart was beating much faster than it should have been. He glanced down and realized Fourth had fallen asleep. For several minutes, he simply sat there, afraid to move. Eventually, one of the managers offered to wake Fourth, but Gemini stopped him immediately. "Let him sleep," he said. The manager looked surprised but nodded. A little later, when the campfire ended, Gemini carefully draped his own jacket over Fourth's shoulders and stayed beside him until he woke up. The next morning, Fourth happily thanked him for the jacket and returned it with a bright smile. "You're really kind, Gemini." Gemini nearly laughed at how wrong that statement was. If Fourth knew what was happening inside his head every time they were together, he would never describe him as calm or kind. Back in Bangkok, life returned to normal, but Gemini's feelings continued growing stronger. Then one evening, while leaving the office, he accidentally overheard several employees discussing Fourth. One woman from marketing admitted that she thought the intern was cute. Another employee joked that half the company probably had a crush on him. The conversation was harmless, but Gemini felt an unfamiliar feeling tightening in his chest. Jealousy. It was ridiculous. Fourth was young, charming, and liked by everyone. Of course people would be interested in him. Yet the thought bothered Gemini far more than it should have. Standing alone in his office later that night, he finally accepted a truth he had been avoiding for weeks. Somewhere between the morning greetings, the late-night conversations, the shared taxi ride, and the countless smiles, he had fallen completely in love with Fourth Natawat. The problem was that Fourth still looked at him the same way he always had, as a respected boss, a trusted mentor, and perhaps a friend. Gemini had no idea how to change that, but for the first time in his life, solving a problem seemed much harder than writing code. The weeks after the company retreat were the most confusing period of Gemini's life. He had spent years solving impossible technical problems, negotiating million-dollar contracts, and leading one of Thailand's most successful technology companies, yet none of those challenges had prepared him for being in love with Fourth. Every day became a battle between his professional image and his growing feelings. He wanted to stay close to Fourth, but he also wanted to protect him from office gossip and unnecessary pressure. Meanwhile, Fourth continued living happily without realizing anything. He still walked into Gemini's office without fear, still sent him funny memes during lunch breaks, and still smiled at him in a way that made Gemini's heart skip a beat every single time. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, Fourth stayed late to help finish a project. Most employees had already gone home when the building suddenly lost power because of a storm outside. The office became dark, and only the emergency lights remained. Fourth let out a surprised yelp before laughing nervously. Moments later, he felt someone standing beside him. "Are you okay?" Gemini asked. "Yeah, I just wasn't expecting that." A loud thunderclap shook the windows, causing Fourth to instinctively move closer. Without thinking, Gemini reached for his hand. The gesture was meant to reassure him, but the moment their fingers touched, neither of them moved away. They stood there in the dim light, listening to the rain outside. For Gemini, it felt like the longest and shortest moment of his life. For Fourth, it felt strangely comforting. When the electricity finally returned, both of them quietly let go, pretending nothing unusual had happened, but neither could forget it. A few days later, FutureMind received exciting news. A famous international technology company had offered Fourth a full-time position after graduation. It was the kind of opportunity many young developers dreamed about. Everyone in the office congratulated him, including Gemini. He smiled and told Fourth he deserved it, but the words felt heavy in his chest. That night, after everyone had left, Gemini sat alone in his office staring at the city skyline. The thought of Fourth working somewhere else, laughing with different coworkers, and slowly disappearing from his daily life made him feel unexpectedly empty. For the first time, he realized that this was no longer just a crush. He genuinely could not imagine a future without Fourth in it. A month later, Gemini and Fourth traveled together to Singapore for an international technology conference. During the day, they attended meetings and presentations. At night, they explored the city after work. Away from the office, their relationship felt different. They laughed more easily, talked about personal dreams, and spent hours together without realizing how much time had passed. On their final evening, they walked along the waterfront while the city lights reflected across the water. Fourth excitedly spoke about the future, including the possibility of accepting the overseas job. Gemini listened quietly. Every sentence felt like another reminder that he might lose the person who had changed his life. Eventually, Fourth noticed his silence. "Gemini, are you okay?" he asked. Gemini stopped walking. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The cool night breeze moved gently around them while the city sparkled behind them. Then Gemini finally made a decision. He was tired of pretending. He was tired of hiding. Before courage could disappear, he reached out and gently held Fourth's wrist. The younger man looked surprised. "If you leave," Gemini said softly, "I'll be happy for your success. But I don't want you to go." Fourth blinked in confusion. "Why?" The question sounded innocent, and that made everything even harder. Gemini looked directly into his eyes. "Because somewhere along the way, you became the most important person in my life." Fourth froze. His heart suddenly began racing. Gemini took a deep breath before continuing. You were the first person who smiled at me without expecting anything. The first person who made me want to leave my office and enjoy life again. I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. Fourth. I like you. More than a friend. More than an employee. The world seemed to stop. Fourth could only stare at him in shock. Gemini gave a small, nervous laugh, something so rare that Fourth barely recognized it. You don't have to answer now, he said quietly. I just couldn't keep it inside any longer. Before stepping back, Gemini gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from Fourth's forehead and placed a soft kiss on his cheek. It lasted only a second, but it carried every feeling he had been hiding for months. Then he immediately looked away, afraid he had gone too far. Fourth stood completely still, his face burning red and his heart beating wildly. For the first time since they met, he saw not the brilliant CEO of FutureMind, but simply Gemini, a man standing in front of him with his heart completely exposed. And although Fourth was still too shocked to understand his own feelings, one thing had become painfully clear. The distance between them was gone. Nothing would ever be the same again. After the confession in Singapore, everything felt different, yet strangely nothing changed at all. When they returned to Bangkok, Gemini kept his promise and did not pressure Fourth for an answer. He treated him exactly as before during meetings, project discussions, and daily work. However, the situation became much more difficult for Fourth than he expected. Before the confession, he had never questioned his feelings. Gemini was simply Gemini. His respected boss, mentor, and the person he trusted most in the company. But now, every interaction suddenly carried a new meaning. Every time Gemini looked at him, Fourth remembered the sincerity in his eyes that night. Every time Gemini spoke his name, his heart reacted in a way it never had before. He tried convincing himself that he was simply surprised by the confession, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his feelings had been changing for a long time. He remembered how safe he felt whenever Gemini was nearby. He remembered how excited he became whenever Gemini praised his work. He remembered the late-night conversations, the taxi ride after the bar, the company retreat, the way Gemini always seemed to notice when he was tired, hungry, or stressed. None of those memories felt ordinary anymore. One evening, while cleaning his apartment, Fourth found the jacket Gemini had lent him during the retreat. He sat on his bed holding it and suddenly laughed at himself. The answer had been there all along. Whenever something good happened, Gemini was the first person he wanted to tell. Whenever something bad happened, Gemini was the person he wanted beside him. Somewhere between friendship and admiration, his heart had quietly fallen in love too. The realization made his face turn red, but it also made him smile. A week later, FutureMind held the official launch event for its biggest AI product of the year. The entire company had worked for months on the project, and the event was a massive success. Investors were impressed, customers were excited, and employees celebrated enthusiastically. Throughout the evening, Gemini remained professional as always, but his attention constantly drifted toward Fourth. He knew he had given the younger man space to think, yet the uncertainty was slowly driving him crazy. By the end of the event, he had almost convinced himself that Fourth did not feel the same. While standing alone on the rooftop terrace to escape the noise downstairs, Gemini stared at the city lights and accepted that he would be grateful simply to keep Fourth in his life, regardless of the answer. A few minutes later, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he found Fourth standing there. The younger man looked nervous, which immediately made Gemini's heart race. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Fourth walked closer and stood beside him. Gemini, he said quietly. I've been thinking a lot. Gemini nodded but remained silent. At first, I was shocked, Fourth continued. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even understand my own feelings. The CEO felt his chest tighten. Then Fourth smiled softly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that you've been important to me for a very long time. Gemini stared at him. For once, the brilliant CEO could not think of a single word to say. Fourth laughed nervously before continuing. Whenever something happens, I want to tell you. Whenever I'm happy, I want to share it with you. Whenever I'm struggling, you're the person I look for. His cheeks turned red. I know. I love you too. For a moment, Gemini simply stood there, completely speechless. The words felt almost unreal. Then Fourth stepped closer and gently took his hand. You know, he said with a small grin, for someone who's supposed to be a genius, it took you a really long time to realize you liked me. Gemini actually laughed, a genuine laugh that Fourth had never heard before. The sound made his heart melt instantly. Without thinking, Fourth wrapped his arms around him. Gemini hugged him back immediately, pulling him close as if he never wanted to let go. Months of hidden feelings, uncertainty, and longing disappeared in that single embrace. They stayed like that for a long moment, surrounded by the lights of Bangkok and the warm night air. Eventually, Fourth looked up and found Gemini smiling down at him. The cold expression that everyone in the company feared was completely gone. In its place was a softness that only Fourth had ever managed to bring out. Gemini gently brushed his thumb across Fourth's cheek before leaning down and placing a tender kiss on his forehead. It was simple, but it carried more emotion than any speech ever could. Fourth's face immediately turned red, causing Gemini to laugh again. Cute, he whispered. Hey. Fourth protested, embarrassed, making Gemini smile even more. For the first time in years, the CEO felt truly happy. Not because of a successful product, a business deal, or company growth, but because of the person standing beside him. The cheerful intern who had walked into FutureMind months ago had unknowingly changed everything. And as they stood together beneath the city lights, holding hands while planning their future, both of them knew this was only the beginning of their story. The cold CEO and the sunshine intern were no longer two parallel lines moving separately through life. They had finally found each other, and from that moment on, they would walk the same path together. The end. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support me and motivate me to create more videos.